Are you a female entrepreneur who feels stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure how to move forward? The Life Coaching for Business Builders program helps you harness your inner power, build your authentic platform, and chart a clear path to business success. You don't have to do this alone. Together, we'll create strategies, structure, and accountability to help you boss up in life and business. It's time to claim your power and make your business dreams a reality.
Welcome to Boss Business Strategies Talk Show, the premier talk show for entrepreneurs looking to scale to their first $1 million, where I bring you front and center to the blueprint behind the brands, straight from the millionaire entrepreneurs themselves. I'm your host, Dr. Marcea, physician, life and business coach, and radio personality, and I help female entrepreneurs who are navigating the business building process to harness the power of their story, build an authentic platform, and chart a clear pathway to success. It's about the power, the platform, and yes, the pathway. And today I am beyond excited to welcome a powerhouse who's done just that, Dr. Janie Lacy. She is a renowned trauma psychotherapist and the visionary CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, driven by her unwavering passion to empower individuals overcoming life's challenges. She stands as a leading mental health expert, celebrated for her transformative Women Redeemed program. Dr. Lacy's work has earned her global recognition through television appearances and prestigious awards, including the 2023 International Institute of Trauma and Addiction Professionals Inaugural Leadership Award. She inspires healing and redemption and shares her expertise through the Let's Talk About It with Janie Lacy podcast. She also has been on a 10X stage, and she's an expert therapist on TLC's hit show, The Last Resort. And I think I've seen her also on Court TV. So without further ado, I want to bring over Dr. Janie Lacy to the show. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Dr. Marcea. So glad to be here with you.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's great for our paths to have crossed. I remember the first time I met you, we were doing the Teach Me How to Heal. We were both facilitators with Shelly Fanfan's event. It was a phenomenal experience. I ended up in your breakout room as well. And since then, our paths have crossed a couple of other times at Miss Corporate America. But can you just kind of share with those that are watching kind of a little bit about who you are and what your passion is?
Well, my passion is I help women, in particular, women business owners and entrepreneurs, heal from toxic relationships so they can thrive not only in their life, should they choose love again, but their overall businesses. So I'm the CEO of Life Counseling Solutions. So we are a group practice in the Central Florida area, and all of the 7 therapists, including myself, we specialize in different areas. And then I'm also a faculty member. I'm on a couple of boards, and my prime passion is sharing through media and educating people that I will never meet in person, but will meet me on their screens to help them with their mental health, with toxic relationships, and just some life-changing education that may help save their lives, in particular around domestic violence.
Yeah, that's good. Now you just said a whole word. You said you help women to heal from toxic relationships and things and trauma. I mean, we could stay here. I mean, that's I don't know, a lifelong journey as far as uh, trying to help people through that. And for one, I applaud you for the work that you're doing. And if I can, I wanted to just kind of start with how did you get to, how did you get here? How did you get to helping folks heal from their trauma?
Well, that is always the $1 million question, Dr. Marcia. So I have to start with, I believe I'm a woman of faith, so I believe God ordained my steps because when I tell you the story, I'll give you the Cliff Note story, but when I tell you the story, things lined up that were not of my will, that were of his will. So, that's the first and foremost. But when I look back and I connect the dots, that everything in our life, I believe, is orchestrated for our good. So this tragedy, which my Women Redeem program is birthed from, is from the legacy of my eldest sister. Her name was Carmen Rivera. She was in a toxic marital relationship with kids, and the most dangerous time for a woman is when she's leaving a domestically violent relationship. And she became a statistic when she was leaving that relationship, so it resulted in him taking her life. And I was a young girl when that happened, and how that shifted and changed our family was something that I realize now that God orchestrated me to be what I needed at that time. Our family had a cap as far as our education around mental health, around services. Our family was in survival mode. So being able to attend to the children of the family was not part of the equation. It was, how do we pay the bills? What's happened, right? Survival mode. So then I find myself in toxic relationships myself, going to college, and then here I am, right? So when we become what we know, and in that sense, I became curious as I continued to move through my own life. And then I discovered that the higher we get when it comes to women, whether we're CEOs, whether we're entrepreneurs, whether we're in the C-suite, that there's this secret that people tend to keep. And the secret is usually in our dysfunctional marriages and our relationships. Because from societal standpoint, we have it all together. She's smart, she's pretty, like all of these different things people label us with. So then you kind of take on this mantle of shame, and then you want to hide. Well, if this is true, I like, it's not my saying, it's Bishop R.C. Blake out of New Orleans. He says, it's the PhD woman, metaphorically, you're getting together with the GED man, right? So when you have these disconnects and this sense that people are so isolated, they can have girlfriends, we can have circles, but you still don't feel connected. And then I had found out that I was not the only one that experienced that. I found more girlfriends or more people, and especially in the therapeutic world, meeting a lot of people confidentially, I realized that this was a thing. And so, not only from my sister, from my own story, from meeting countless women through the years, so then that's how I birthed the Women Redeem program in particular. So, not only through research, but through evidence based, there are three tenets for healing, right? So, not everyone subscribes to having a spiritual base. I do personally. But on top of that spiritual base, there's three tenets of healing. There's our mindset work. We don't know what we don't know. And until we get to our belief system and we kind of really take it apart and and put it together, we really don't know, because we have experiences from our own family, our own relationships, or our own level of what we see through the world. So we have to look at our belief system, and then we do our inner work. And our inner work is not about blaming our childhood or blaming previous, but it's about understanding and leading in, because it's not about the problems that we have in our life. It's about the patterns that show up in our life. And there's only one common denominator, and that's us. But sometimes it's hard for us to look, and I'm using us collectively talking about women. It's hard for us to look in the mirror because we become so performance oriented. We become so servant oriented. So then when we can hide even behind that because we're doing all the things for other people. And then you realize that no one really knows you, even though you know a lot of people. So then doing that inner work is going to be important. And then the third pillar is the somatic work. Trauma stays in our body. And we have to do all three of those pillars to really kind of get to a good system. And to your point, it's not necessarily that everyone ever arrives. It's that we're on the journey, that we're constantly on that journey of being curious, of leaning in, of making different decisions. Because how do we break patterns? We get the same situation that comes in front of us over and over and over again, and we start responding differently. But most women can't do it alone without accountability, without community, without a tribe around her, because she'll find herself making those same repetitive mistakes. So not only have I lived it personally, but I walk with many women professionally, and that's how my quick summation of
Wow.
I've gotten to this passion.
Yeah, that is a powerful story. And if we could do it ourselves, we would, right? It's kind of like if you could do your own appendectomy, you would. but but some things are surgical, if you will. And so I want you to speak to. I haven't heard it verbalized that way, but you said about the somatic work. Can you give just some touch points on what that is, what that looks like, and how you walk people through it?
So we have conscious memories and then we have a subconscious. So when we are in survival mode and when you are, especially in formative years, when you've experienced abuse, you've experienced neglect, you experience rejection, you experience abandonment, that sometimes, and I do believe sometimes it is God's protection, is we don't remember the details of our experiences because we do something that's called disassociation. Our mind goes off. I call it the spaceship, Dr. Marcea. It goes off to the spaceship. You know, as women, we go to the gynecologist and we're on those stirrups. They have a teddy bear on the ceiling for a reason, right? They want us to disassociate what's happening. So it's the same thing when things are happening to us that, you know, are disrupting who we are meant to be, we disassociate. But our nervous system remembers. Our emotionality and our body remembers. So you can be, sometimes you can hear people say, well, you know, it's a different man, but it's a different man, but I still feel the same. That's our body remembering the things that were stored in our body, whether it was the rejection, whether it's the anxiety, whether it's the depression, whether it's the abuse, whatever that may be. We may not remember, but our body remembers it. So sometimes when people get angry, before the anger is expressed outwardly, they can feel it in their body. They can get the upset stomach. They feel the heart racing. Sometimes they're getting a headache, right? And we know that there is scientific evidence that ties a lot of illnesses, especially later in life, to all the toxic stress that we carry in our body years after years, cancers, migraines, immunity issues, right? It's all linked, and it's not my opinion. There's science that shows that. So that's the somatic work. And we can sometimes separate our mind from our body so people can talk about problems, they can talk about things, but we can't just keep it from the neck up, right? We also have to work into a holistic standpoint. And to me, that's the mind, body, and the spirit. But in that, that's where we also are working out the nervous system. That we do that through breath work. We do that. I'm an EMDR therapist, so bilateral stimulation. We're unlocking the unconscious things and we're bringing it to the surface because what our mind doesn't remember, our body does. And that's why it's so important to really understand what somatic work is. But from a basic standpoint, to help people understand somatic work could be bilateral stimulation. We're unlocking memories in our brain that are locked away, and they're locked away for as a survival protection mechanism. It's breath work to also, and I'm not talking about like we're just counting 1, 2, 3 breathing, right? So if we go through true breath work, you're actually doing a lot of work because you're using all of your lungs to push out the breath, and you're doing it in a systematic way to release a lot of pain and trauma in your body. And then, you know, from some of the somatic bilateral stimulation work, that's also it could be something as simple as biking, it could be hiking, it could be walking, it could just be swimming, where you're literally using both sides of your body to release. And a lot of people, the natural reward system is being dopamine is being released, right? Which is why they say not even from a aesthetic look exercise, but from a mental health perspective, moving our body also helps, and that's why because we're connecting ourselves. So that will be explaining it in the most basic way.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And I want to pause for a second just to kind of reframe our conversation. And you talked about healing from trauma and toxic relationships. And I want, if you could, just to kind of touch on the definition of trauma. And everyone in the world may not have they were physically abused or sexually abused. Sometimes it was I don't know, the kindergarten teacher, or it's the something that happened when you were in college where it may not be traumatic for someone else, but it was traumatic for you. Can you just kind of define how this conversation is cross-cutting depending on no matter what level of trauma that you've experienced?
Absolutely. So one, I believe everyone has experienced a level of trauma. So in a very basic way, the way that sometimes in our field we explain it is there's big T's, that is the car accidents, that's the abuse, that is something that you can directly say, this happened, this is why I do this. And then we have the little T's, right? So I would put myself in the category of the little T's. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. It's every time you bring your report card home that your parent is picking out that C versus praising you for that A. It's every time that you're in a friend group, someone rejects you or leaves you out, right? So I like Dr. Matei's definition. It's not what happened to us, it's what happened in us, right? So that's why you can have the same family, you can have experienced the same thing, But let's say you experience emotionally unavailable parents, but two siblings from the same family can experience those emotionally unavailable parents very differently. One can still thrive because what they needed in their young self was very different than the one that you can completely see as they get older. They're repetitive, is what we call trauma repetition. They're repeating, finding people that will continually neglect them, right? Because what happened in their experience of it. And that's to your point. So not everyone has experienced those outward big traumas, but we've all have experienced, some of the rejection, some of the abandonment, and it's not a one-time off. It could be a one-time off depending on how it affected, how important our need was, but it could be multiple little tiny traumas along the way. And that's why it's important for people to have a PhD in their own history, right? Because you and I go to schools and we got PhDs in other people's schools, right? So I believe we have to have a PhD in our own history because then we won't do the comparative suffering. Well, the comparative suffering is, well, I didn't get sexually abused or that didn't happen to me. So, you know what? Praise God. No, then that's what we're doing is we gaslight ourselves and we minimize our own pain because we start comparing it to other people. That's their
Yes.
to deal with. Ours could be something as neglect. It could be abandonment. It could be you wanted that job and you just had your mindset on getting that job and you didn't get that job and you find yourself, you know, now being fearful to apply for that next job, right? That's how it shows up in our daily life. So sometimes people hear trauma, they go to those worst case scenarios to your point, but we each and every single one of us, if we dig down in there, we've all
Yeah, we
experienced
got something. It's in there.
it. Is.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Janie, as you have been sharing and giving, some of the principles and some of the ways that you help from therapy perspective, I do know that, and I read it in the bio that you have kind of come over into the other zone where you are on TV. You do have podcasts. You are, traveling, across the world to share what you have. And you even said people may benefit from you from seeing you on a screen. Tell me, what was the defining moment? What had you say, you know what? I'm going to come out of the therapy room and I'm going to take it on a bigger platform.
I would always say that it was God's plan, not my plan, because the very first time that I was asked to appear on Fox 35 in Orlando, actually, and I remember the year, it was 2008, that I was in my marital relationship, navigating that marital relationship, and I had wrote an article off of my experience at the time on 5 ways of how to stay married. And Fox 35 had called, and I was a registered. So in the state of Florida, we have some pre-licensed work that we have to do before we get licensed as psychotherapists or a mental health therapist or psychologist. So I was in my pre-work. I was considered a registered intern. I was new to the field. And Fox 35 called and said, we found this blog that you wrote, and we want you to come and talk about it on and pretty much the next morning on their morning show because it was January, and January they were doing a segment about January was like Christmas for divorce attorneys. People wait until after the holidays, all these other things. So I remember like, okay, I've never been on a news station. And I remember having so much anxiety, but some voice in my head, which I believe it was God, say, yes, they need to hear your voice. So I went to the station and I felt like I was going to throw up. I went at that time, it's very different than how it is now because right now they use a lot of automation. But at that time, there's news reporters going around. It felt like for ADHD person, this felt like a lot of stuff was going on. I was so nervous, but I sat down with Heidi Hatch. She's no longer with Fox 35. She's actually out of Salt Lake City, Utah now. And I remember just talking to her, and I was so nervous. I actually have that clip. I'll have to send it to you so you can see how far I've come. And she had said, just talk as if you're talking with me at Starbucks, because there was so much going on behind the camera. Right now, when you go, there's just more automation. The cameras move themselves. Before, there were producers, there's people handling the cameras, all this. And I literally felt myself like going blank. And she said, just look at me. Don't even look at the cameras. Two girlfriends having a conversation at Starbucks. So when I did that, when I left, I said, wow, not only did I get good feedback, but I felt like from my where I stood that I was sharing information that can make impact. So that kind of opened the door was exposure And the knock at the door, I said yes at the right time. And I know it was the right time because that was an exponential, accelerated growth from that experience. But the most pivotal moment was actually something that I don't have a lot on social media about, was it was actually a show called The Bill Cunningham Show.
Hmm.
And the Bill Cunningham show was out of New York City and called me up. Hey, we want to fly you to New York City. We want you to be on this. It was a live audience. So I do have some clips on
That's
there, but I don't have
cool.
a lot of clips on there because it was like maybe for me, three steps above a Jerry Springer. But when I was on that, when I was in the room, in the back of the room, I remember the producers were giving me almost negative critical feedback. They had said to me, Dr. Marcea, we want you to be a Dr. Phil. We want you to get in their face. We want you to tell them like it is. Like literally, they were trying to make me be something that I was not. So when I went on the stage, I'm literally having, and I have this clip, it's actually interesting because I know what I was going through inside, but I was intervening, doing a family counseling session, literally in this front of this live audience on this talk show. And they wanted me to intervene on this couple who were at the time smoking marijuana in front of their child. And the aha moment was actually when I was leaving the studio, right? So it was fun, right? They had to pick you up in a limousine. You have your personal assistant, there's security there. You're going in this building in New York City. All that stuff was fun at the time. But when I left, I felt so empty. And that was the pivotal moment for me. And this is why it felt empty to me, because I realized in that process, they were trying to make me be something I was not. And the pivotal moment said, if I am not going to be able to be my authentic self and do it only the way that I do it, I'm not going to be a Dr. Phil. I'm not going to be anyone else. I only could be a Janie. And at that moment, I said, I'm not going to do television ever again if I have to be somebody I'm not. Because that feeling that I'm literally getting ready, Dr. Marcia, to go out in front of the live stage audience. And she's like, go tell them like it is, get in their face, do whatever. And here I am as a professional person, and they're trying to like make me something I'm not. And I never wanted to feel that again. And my mind, I made a pact that I'm never going to do television again unless I can be my authentic self. And every opportunity after that, I can be my authentic self. And that's how I knew that that was part of God's plan for me and not mine. Because you could probably see, and I won't get on my soapbox about this, but you could probably see whether on social media or on television now, everyone is trying to be the fruit picker. They're trying to see what a Dr. Marcy is doing. They're trying to see what a Dr. Janie's doing instead of just being their authentic self, right? I think we can be inspired by other people, but there's so many fruit pickers,
Yeah.
and I think we need to get back to just being authentic. And that's why I was so glad that that's something that's been sustainable for me. I'm just going to be myself. Any woman that's a business owner, an entrepreneur, we can be inspired by other people. We can, do all the things to kind of see what works. But ultimately, I believe what's going to be for you is going to be for you, and it's going to be for you to be authentic. And I believe that that's what television has done for me.
I love everything about that. And I just want to pick a couple of the gems that you dropped and add a little bit of emphasis to it. The first thing that you said was that you were writing a blog and
Hmm.
someone saw it.
Hmm.
And so, for those entrepreneurs that are listening, do what you're called to do. If you have whatever messaging you have, go ahead and share it. And it isn't, and you can, Dr. Janique will be able to share as well. It isn't one to one. Just because you put out a blog doesn't mean someone's going to call you and bring you on TV. Okay, you just have to be your authentic self and sharing things in a way that people can find you. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then there was some things in between, but I'll jump to the end where you talked about you just being you. And when they were trying to make you be somebody else, and you were like, no, I don't like that. I felt empty. And when we are flowing in our authenticity, that is when that's when all the gifts that we have been bestowed upon us start to now come out. Now they start to gel together, and now we can walk out this pathway that God has placed for us. And so I think that was just a critical and a pivotal message that you shared. So one, I want to thank you, and I thank you just for the authenticity and just having that message to be resonated. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. So again, so the show is focused for entrepreneurs. more so female entrepreneurs. But guys, if you're listening in, you belong here as well. But I wanted to ask you a question about that woman, that maybe that entrepreneur who has that trauma, but she is a high performing. I'm gonna call it, you said, the PhD woman who is not going to stop long enough to address it. One, because she doesn't have the skills, and she's compartmentalized it enough that she doesn't think it's showing up. But as we know, it is showing up. But what would you say to that person, and how would you help her?
First thing I would say to that person who's high achieving, she's constantly going, is that I understand because that was me. Right. So the first thing is that when we can become a workaholic, that can also be a trauma response. Because when we are constantly working and doing, we don't have the moment or the bandwidth to stop and to actually deal and feel with what's inside of us. And when we do stop and feel and deal, to your point, sometimes we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to sit still. We don't know how to sit in the presence or in the presence of God, if you're a woman of faith. So the first thing is I would say is to get around other women who understand and be on the journey. Because just for me saying that, it doesn't mean the person's going to stop. I know if you would have told me that, 15 years ago, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. This is, we tell ourselves a narrative to help us survive that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you will experience burnout. Some point you will experience dysfunctional relationships. At some point you will experience loneliness. And at some point you will even experience different, it can show up financially. It can show up making bad relational decisions. It can have bad people around you. Because one of the things that I realized in that busyness and in that trauma, over functioning, saying yes to everything, over functioning, I need to do it myself, the workaholism, is the other side of it is you miss things that were very important. I can look back and I can say the things that I had missed was people around me, in the sense that I was looking for that python to strike, that cobra to strike, but they were the pythons, right? It's the people that were closest to you that had the ability to squeeze, but I
Mm-hmm.
was always looking out there for the cobra, right? Because we miss when we're busy, we're slow. We're for me, I should say, when I was in that busy season, it was quick to hire and slow to fire. I would keep people around past the expiration date. I would have people because in the moment, my codependency and my own dysfunction would say, well, I like her or I like this person, so they're going to hire. I didn't vet people well. And I would allow people around me who would bring me down and who would harm me. So if we don't slow down and deal with our trauma, we may be over functioning and we cannot slow down enough to be able to, because especially when you've had experience of clarity, you now know when you're operating in slowness and you're living present and you're not hustling and going from the one thing to another. Because my body's even responding as I'm saying that to you, just when I was hustling and constantly doing stuff, is that you cannot have good discernment. Sometimes we can have good enough discernment, but it's not discernment. In the sense that we have to be present, we have to be awoken, we have to be able to have time to be able to understand what's being attached to us. And so when we don't do those things as high functioning women, we're just so focused on whatever that purpose is that we feel like a lot of mistakes can be made. We can attach to the wrong people. We can even be saying yes to the wrong projects. I can say that for myself in the sense of just being a people pleaser. Well, I like this or I like that. And it wasn't really an alignment with, for me, the alignment is going to be helping women. It's going to be business. It's going to be entrepreneur. It's going to be helping women come out of toxic relationships. And right now, domestic violence. So if we're clear, then when it comes, like when Dr. Marcea has a podcast around business strategies and women, that's in alignment with me. Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe someone else is just talking about depression in general. That's not going to necessarily be in alignment with me. So we now can say yes to the things in alignment because we are clear. So
Mm-hmm.
the best gift that a woman can do and to give to herself, because it's not separate. It can't be we have this personal dysfunction and it's not going to show up professionally. It will show up professionally. It will just show up differently. I just gave you a personal example. It's
Exactly.
my toxic relationships and my toxic dynamic in my personal life showed up professionally. I was hiring people that were familiar. I was hiring people who, were were harmful to me because I was already used to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but we can't see it when we're in it. So if we're getting around healing community, we do our inner work, we're around people who can challenge us, we get around people who can see us. So I believe in coaches, I believe in therapists. I've had it all, I still have it all, right? Business coach, counseling, being around a good tribe of female. Then we can have people who call us out. I have one of my good girlfriends who can call me out and say, that's your stuff, Janie. And right. And it may feel Dr. Marcea, ouch, but I know her. She's telling me in love because she can see something I can't.
Yeah.
And if we don't have those people around us, then I believe we're going to hit a cap or we're going to be spinning our wheels. We're going to get stuck. And I can only speak, I can speak that directly from myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. But how do we, and you mentioned about you having, your coaches, you having your counselors, and how do we heal without being hindered with shame?
So the first step in healing is we have to acknowledge. And we have to be able to acknowledge that what I'm doing is not working for me, whatever that may be. But we have to acknowledge that the key is acknowledging that in a place of safety. Because as women on the other side of it, the reason why we will, because shame is something is wrong with me. The reason why we will attach that shame to ourselves, because there probably was a time where you did acknowledge it, but sometimes we've acknowledged it to the wrong person. We've acknowledged it in, sometimes the bed with a man because we were looking for nurture and guidance that we didn't get from our mom. So now we're looking for it in the wrong place. And then we get burnt. Or you've told that best friend who was really jealous of you, but you didn't know that, right? So we tell the wrong
Mm,
people and they can't hold the space for us. So then we now hold that shame even more because I'm not going to get burnt again, right? That's what people will tell themselves. So the first step is acknowledging that what I'm doing is not working. There's something that needs to change, and I have to be curious as to what that is. And second is you have to have a process. A process is someone who is far enough ahead that understands what you're going through enough where you can hear the objectivity. And that's going to be the belief system because I know I can look at my old self and the belief system was I can do it myself. I can't. I was that little ant that's just building myself because I can't trust people. No one can do it the way I can do it, right? So we have to challenge that belief system. And we can't challenge that belief system until we speak that to someone else, until someone else can speak into our life. And then that's the mapping that happens as a result. The mapping for Dr. Marcea, the mapping for Dr. Janie is going to be very different. It's going to be who was in Marcia's life, who was in Janie's life. Where was I wounded at? Where was I wounded at that I keep trying to chase
mm,
that feeling again of trying to repair? We can go back subconsciously to the same thing over and over and over again, or even in a business standpoint. And I see this more than ever right now, Dr. Marcea. There are more women who are chasing to be seen because they were never seen. And it's not even about the purpose of what they're saying it is. And the way that you can detect that is because they are fruit pickers. Okay, well, Dr. Marcea has a podcast. I need a podcast. Dr. Janie Lacy is on Court TV. How can I get on Court TV? What did God say that you needed to do? Right?
mm,
So to me, in that sense, it's like just trying to get to the finish line. You're trying to get to the finish line where versus running your own marathon. So acknowledgement, getting around people who can be objective and who can speak that into your and speak that to you in the way that you can hear it, because we can say that, but not everyone, we can't hear that from just anyone. And then we start cutting ourselves open, looking at our life and looking at what has happened to me and what has happened to me. How is that still showing up in my life today? And usually, some of the ways for women in particular, it shows up is exactly that. It shows up in men, it shows up in food, and it shows up in finances. And if
mm,
we can't completely safely look at that, then we're going to continue to have shame because we're going to hold that. And we know that shame is going to continue to grow in the dark because people will tell me, some women will say, well, I'm only going to take that to me in the grave, take this to me in the grave. But it's still showing up in their life today.
ooh,
So we have to get curious. And then that's where the belief system comes into play. I had to change my belief system that I don't have to do it at all. Yes, the people in my life along the way have disappointed me, but God has sent other people in my life who are not going to disappoint me. Right. So then you start creating a new reality over and over and over again by challenging the belief system. And that's the inner work. And then that's where we also do it also shows up for women. And sometimes we can, and I can speak for myself, fluctuate in weight. right? Because we're eating our problems and then we're trying
Mm-mm.
to binge diet. We can binge and purge through diet and exercise, right? Because that's anxiety. I know that's for if I'm anxious, you'll see me chewing, but
Yep.
now I'm nuts and carrots and right? Or if you're depressed and you're restricting because you're feeding the energy of perhaps relationships, these other types of things. And then when we get that changing the belief system, doing the inner work, the mapping, curiosity, it's not to blame, but it's to understand because we also
Mhm.
have to understand our toxic ways. And then we have to look at the somatic work. We bring all those three together, and then you continuously, the situations, the way that life works, and every woman that's listening to us will identify this. The same situation will present itself to us over and over and over again. How we do one thing is how we do all things. Familiarity will continue to find us. So then we have to respond differently. I can tell women all day long, have boundaries, have boundaries. But first, she has to recognize that she has no boundaries.
Mhm.
Even business, right? I can look at myself, or my old self now. I'm like, here I was thinking I had boundaries. I had no boundaries. I'm saying yes to this and, burning out and because I didn't have boundaries. So then you have to look at, okay, well, she can't even say no because she doesn't even know what she should be saying yes to. So
Oh.
we have to kind of go into all of that stuff. And I
Yes.
believe that that's really, I can speak for myself, that really unlocked my own purpose to a whole nother level, right? And I believe that wherever women are in their entrepreneur or their business, this is where the personal meets our professional, and it also unlocks other layers in our professional life.
Mhm.
The doors will continue to open, and that's how you know you're in that flow. You're in that flow because you're not saying for me, saying no back then was being mean because that's how I grew up in my family. It was survival. So parenting was coming through a lens of being mean, right? So a no, I would hear it in a way that was very critical. So I never wanted to give anybody that experience. So it could be that's a belief system, right? So I'm giving people
Mm.
an example. It could be a belief system, something as that, but I wouldn't have known that unless I did my own process.
Right.
Had somebody unpack me to be able to bring that out in me and challenge me on that.
Wow.
So that's how that woman is going to start changing her belief system. Have to acknowledge, to kind of recap, you have to acknowledge it. And then you have to be curious about your belief system. Why am I the way that I am? And why am I walking and finding myself in these same patterns? And then we do the inner work. Where have I experienced this before? Where have I felt this before? What am I trying to chase? What am I running from or what am I running to? Sometimes it could be I'm running to that unavailable father, and I find people who are emotionally unavailable, but I think they're available because I can't have discernment because I'm not healed yet. And then the somatic experiences we're constantly releasing those things. And I was at the gym this week, and I think I want to go to the gym every week. No, it's part of my own healing process. But it's constantly releasing, and it's not obviously taking care of yourself too, right? Because I believe we are our brand, but it's constantly releasing all the stress and the anxiety. It's getting the natural reward dopamine so that I'm not drinking every night, right? Some people are
Right.
drinking or they're smoking or they're working or they're eating
Right.
because they don't know how to find the natural dopamine reward systems to keep them going on a healing journey, which I believe is where accountability is key.
I love all of that. Thank you for sharing it. And for those that are listening, you're getting some good nuggets, just to help you throughout, kind of process where you are and decide what to do next. So you talked about boundaries. You talked about saying no to some things, but then I also heard you say about open doors. And so I want to talk about some of the things that you did say yes to that are phenomenal. I know that you were, I don't know if you still are, but the court TV. Then I think there's something separate that's on TLC. Are these separate things? Okay.
Yes, yes.
I want you to
Mhm.
just kind of just share some of the opportunities that you have, been afforded, and what has that experience been like?
Yeah, so when we look at the open door, first with Court TV, when they first approached me in 2022, because now it's going on 3 years. At the time, I didn't even know what Court TV was. But I remember them calling me because I had did a segment, one door can accelerate opening another door, right? You use momentum. So it was on Fox 35 in 2022 when the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case was on all over the television, right? Toxic relationships. So I was on the program talking about how men can also be abused, but men are underreported, and because of the myths that men have, they don't report it. So anyway, Michael Ayala from Court TV had seen me and had his people call, and I had no idea what Court TV was. But I said yes. So I went on with Michael Ayala. We're talking about the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp. And probably 2 days later after that aired, I got a call from UK5 in the United Kingdom in London. And they had said, look, we saw you on Court TV. We're doing a docuseries for Netflix, and we want to know if you can fly to London in 2 days to be part of this docuseries. And at that moment, I'm in the practice. I have a, young son. I have all these things going on. And I felt like, and I remember consulting with someone, and they were like, you need to do that, because I was thinking about, there's no way I can make travel arrangements. So anyway, I said yes to this right project. And the arrangements happened a day later, where instead of going to London, they flew me to LA, and I filmed this docuseries. So when I was in that docuseries, that was the first time that I really realized that perhaps true crime, or using true crime as an education to honor my sister's legacy, because I would say that was not my plan, right? Especially when it comes to Court TV, domestic violence. So I said yes, even though it made me uncomfortable, and I trusted God. And then the doors started opening all the way up till now. You can see me actually going to be on Court TV again tonight, right? So on Court TV about once or twice a week. And those doors, by me showing up in my purpose, educating the public, has opened doors on Discovery ID. It was on a docuseries, the Courtney Clinley case, that was aired earlier this year. And then opening other doors will be in another docuseries that will air on Netflix this end of this year, right? So it opens the door, and that's how you know that you're flowing in the right spaces, because you're not trying to make it happen. It's almost like you attract it because you're in your flow. And I believe that's directly tied to the work that we do personally, by us continuously being curious, again, none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect, but we're continuously being curious. We're continuously trying to show up differently, and we're continuously checking ourselves and making sure we're in alignment with our purpose. Those are how the doors open. And with the TLC, the last 90 Day Fiancé, the last resort, they have over 5 million viewers per episode, which was amazing to me. But the way that came to me was 2 weeks before I had gotten the call from 90 Day Fiancé, Sharp Entertainment's entertainment company. I actually was contacted by Love at First Sight. So they contacted me. They found me on YouTube. So keep putting those YouTube videos out there. So they had contacted me, and I auditioned, I guess, or interviewed for them, and they never called me back. So this was the Love at First Sight franchise. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call from 90 Day Fiancé. And at that time, I was just like, I'm like, okay, because literally this just happened like 2 weeks before that I just did this other competitive show for them. And so when I had asked them, I said, well, how did you find me? They had said, well, you were recommended by Sarah Barnett. And for a minute, I had to think about it. So Sarah Barnett she is a psychotherapist in the Central Florida area. And I had hired her for a women's retreat that I did a year before. And I literally I didn't even know her personally. I was just looking for a psychotherapist who also has yoga instruction, who can understand the trauma in women's bodies that could become part of our retreat. So this person was recommended her, and I got on a Zoom call, met for the first time, and I hired her. But, it was strictly a professional relationship. She would come and do her job. And, it's one of those people, I don't know if she liked me. I don't know. It was just strictly business. So at that time, Sarah Barnett was the one that recommended me. So my point here is that we show up, we're authentic, we be kind, and we be nice. And then when we do our work personally, we can show up professionally present. Because I meet a lot of women, and, and I experience you completely the opposite. But I meet a lot of women who are doing so many things that when you're with them in their presence, like when you and I were present in the few moments that we were at the corporate America, I can see you seeing me, and vice versa. Like I can feel that energy. Where a lot of people sometimes, they have so much going on, you're a transaction to them. And so with Sarah, you know what? I didn't know if that was a transaction, but she saw me and she saw my authentic self. So she recommended me. She was friends with the vice president of this entertainment company that produces this episode. And she recommended me. She didn't know me from Adam. But this is my point, is we show up authentically. We do things consistently. We move at our own pace. And when we're with people, you don't know who that person knows. You don't know who they're attached to. So you show up presently and don't treat people, because I want to get on my soapbox, Dr. Marcea, about this, but I'll make this one point. Is that sometimes I feel people are so transactional. It's like, what can you do for me? Versus really being able to just show up in yourself. I'm not saying that that's necessarily 100% wrong, but just showing up as your authentic self and not using people and not really seeing people for who they are. Because Sarah She didn't have to recommend me, right? They paid me a nice amount of money and put me in a first class resort in marathon filming. I have never done anything like that in my life. For 3 weeks away from my son, I've never done that, but it was a life-changing experience because somebody that I was just my authentic self around didn't even know her personally, right? And I'm so grateful and thankful, but that was a lesson for me. You never know who's watching is a lesson.
Yes.
You never know who people are attached to. And you never know that someone, if they have a good experience of you and your energy, that when something comes and they think about you, you don't know who's speaking your name in rooms that you're not even in because of just how you showed up. And that was the greatest lesson that I've learned from that experience.
I love that. And look, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask all my guests because I think this may dovetail. I ask the question, what was your $1 million moment? Meaning, what happened? What was the basis? What do you attribute to that moment in the future based off of just from the financial piece?
So there's a couple of things that I contribute to the $1 million blueprint is that when you are moving in your flow and your purpose, it doesn't feel like work. And I'm not saying it works that way for everybody. I 100% understand that. But to me, that was the unlocking. I was so hustling, trying to get stuff done. When I look back, I was hustling, and at some point, I was in someone else's practice, and I'm hustling, and how I showed up is I'm going to show up in any space as if it's my own. So I'm working and hustling for someone else's practice, and we're at this moment, this pivotal moment at the negotiation table. And I was getting ready to potentially leave their practice. And they now decided they wanted me to be their partner when I was leaving. And in that negotiation, they presented me with this contract that I would be taking on like debt and other stuff that had nothing to do with me. But this was the $1 million moment. And a lot of people may recognize this. Is then when I had said no, I said, I'm not interested in that. I will take my chances on figuring out this entrepreneur journey. This was back in 2010. And the person said to me, you're not going to make it. You don't have enough network. You don't have enough confidence. They spoke this word over me. And in that moment, the reason why I say that was a $1 million moment for me is because something snapped in me. And it wasn't necessarily from a vengeful standpoint. It was like, it's not that I don't have those things. It just hasn't been birthed in me yet.
Mm,
And I kind of took that and I started hustling a little bit first, hustling, trying to make things happen. And then when things clicked for me, when I found myself to be in the flow, then doors started opening. And when doors start opening, people want to pay you because they want what you have. And sometimes it's not even the knowledge, it's this the whole package that you come. It's your energy, it's how you do things. It's you are your secret sauce. And I think when people find that, truly find that, I think a lot of times we hear it. I can remember me hearing it, not understanding what that really was. But when we hear it and it clicks, I think that was my true $1 million moment, being told that I wasn't ready yet. Instead of the person saying, you know what, you have some areas that this can grow. Like speaking, that person had a moment to speak into me, but yet they did not speak into me. They almost cursed me, so to speak, in that moment. So to me, that was the birthing of all the stuff from that moment till now.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And the other thing that I heard selfishness because you said you were about to leave the practice. And I kind of feel like they were trying to keep you kind of locked in. And not only that, they wanted to kind of spread that debt over to you, and you had the wherewithal to say no. And then out of their anger or their whatever you want to call it, that's when they spoke, kind of lashed out at you and thought that would hinder you. But you used it as fuel, and you turned it into a life with God's help that you have now. So
Yes,
congratulations.
absolutely. I've been to Singapore this year, traveling with my son. We spent last year in Spain. We were in Madrid, Sevilla, Barcelona. We went to Africa. We went to Portugal.
Oh my
And
gosh.
look at all of those things. It's only because I was in my flow for all these years and all the things that people don't see when you're a business entrepreneur, when people are at barbecues, you're working, trying to figure it out. When people are at the beach in the holidays, right? You're right. So there's a lot of sacrifice that comes when we're trying to discover ourselves. But
Hmm.
I also believe that the rewards can be great when we tap
Absolutely.
into our purpose and when we tap into our flow and when we do the inner work in ourself, it will flow over into our business. I 100% believe that.
I love it. Congratulations. Thank you for sharing. And as we get ready to close, I wanted to ask you about your podcast, the Let's Talk About It with Dr. Janie Lacy. Can you share a little bit about what that podcast is about, who's it for, and how folks can get a hold of you?
So the Let's Talk About It with Janie Lacy podcast was birthed in COVID, where when we talk about opportunities come to you, this is a good point. Opportunities come to you. I never thought about doing a podcast. Zero. But an opportunity came to me during COVID. Someone said, I'm going to gift you $10,000 because I want you to start a podcast because people are having mental health crisis and we need to hear your voice. I'm like, what do you do? What mic do you? I mean, but the opportunity came where someone removed the barriers and gave me the funding to start this podcast. So that's where it was birthed 5 years ago. And the podcast was opening the curtains behind celebrities, right? So people that have big platforms, for example, like Tim Story was one, right? So open the curtains to see who they truly are versus what we see. Because a lot of people don't see the hustle, they don't see the adversity, they just get the stars in their eyes and they don't understand what drives that person. So bringing forth people's unique stories, because again, we could be fruit pickers and try to be like someone else, but their story is what made them be and do and be at the place where they are. So I unpack those stories, take the gems from their life lessons that we can all glean from. So it's opening those curtains behind people's lives to understand who they are and how they got to be where they've gotten to be. And the Women Redeemed programs, actually, we're starting tonight. Our next cohort, it's a 12-week program, birthed off of the tenets of my TEDx talk, the mindset, inner work, and the body work. And we take women through through this 3 month journey, doing exactly that. So that on the other side, I've seen birth programs. There's programs now that I've seen in Orlando that have been birthed out of Women Redeemed. That's just been beyond what I could have imagined for these women. And that's when you know that God has used you as that seed planter and that plower, when you see people really birthed in their purpose. So that's what the podcast is about, and the Women Redeemed program.
Awesome. How can listeners get a hold of you?
Yep. So janielacy.com is JANIELACY.com, or on any of the social medias, it's either Janie Lacy or Dr. Janie Lacy.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Janie Lacy, for being on the show. I want you to hang out for a minute. I'm going to say goodbye, then I'm going to come back and talk to you, okay? Hold on 1 second. So here we are. That was Dr. Janie Lacy. She is amazing, and I love the messaging of being authentic, and being able to use your faith as the piece, as the connector. And then the other thing that I took away from this is that it came back to her story with her sister. It's the sister plus her therapy, and now she's able to go on shows like Court TV and beyond, because now her passion is part of her ministry and part of the work that she does. And so I always say, create your own stage. It starts with your story. I am Dr. Marcea. I am the CEO and founder of Life Coaching for Business Builders. And so I want you to continue to follow me here on Boss Business Strategies. Please connect with Dr. Janie Lacy. I want you to stay tuned here on YouTube for more amazing guests. Until next time, signing off, and I'll see you. Take care.